Evening all. So welcome everyone to episode 39 Shark Attack Case Files. So today we're going to do a special episode and it's all about surfers. We're going to look at a couple of attacks that happened in South Australia. So yeah, one just off here, Black Point, South Australia, and then one just up here. Yeah, Cactus Beach, both South Australia. It's only just by sheer coincidence actually that both these attacks happened in South Australia, and then there's another coincidence which I'll get into later. But in terms of South Australia, it's had 26 great white shark fatalities. The last fatality in South Australia was 2021, so not that long ago. And then what I done is I trolled through all the case files and basically, yeah, case files that have been recorded. Obviously there'd be way more attacks on surfers than what's ever been recorded, but there's been over 1,125 case files associated with surfers. So I'm talking about fatalities, injuries, just like recorded bumps, incidents, stuff like that, anything of significance. And then of those 1,125, there's only actually been 62 shark fatalities on surfers, like all species. But they're going to be mainly great whites with a few tiger sharks. And then of those case files, there's only actually been 2 witnessed predations on humans from attacks on surfers. So just run the math on that. What's that? 0.2% roughly. So if you're attacked on a surfboard, there's probably only a 0.2% chance that you're going to be like fatally predated, you know, so killed and eaten basically by a large great white. And the last attack on a surfer was actually 2022. There was a Mexican surfer attacked by a shark. So that's like the statistics. And you commonly associate with surfers, you're commonly associated with mistaken identity, which we touched on in the Simon Nallis video. Probably put a link up in I ain't got a clue how you do that. But yeah, you commonly associate attacks on surfers, yeah, with mistaken identity. They're very rarely sort of like predations. You know, they might be investigations, some might be territorial, but they're mostly going to be mistaken identity. Well, that's the theory anyway, but we'll again delve into that in this video in a bit more detail as well. So the first attack we're going to look at, as mentioned, is this Cactus Beach attack, which took place the 24th, which is a Sunday, September in the year 2000. Cameron Byers, he was 25, he was surfing alone and he was attacked by like a 5.5 meter 16 to 18 foot great white shark, and the attack took place roughly at 7:30 in the morning, so between 7:30 and 8:30. They're not quite sure at the exact time, but he was attacked in only 2 meters of water, which is obviously, you know, around 7 feet of water, so not very deep, and he was about 80 meters, so 87 yards from shore. It's a waning crescent moves phase, and the water temperature there is about 59 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 16 degrees centigrade. Chamomile tea, that lovely drop. Yeah, and he was one of the 0.2%, so he was actually fatally attacked and predated by a great white shark from a surfboard, which is astonishingly rare. I could only find 2 incidences of these attacks basically, and all the evidence that I could find. But obviously you can chip in the comments if you think there's more. But yeah, so very, very rare attack. And the narrative here is, yeah, Cameron, he was a New Zealander. He was on honeymoon with his wife over from New Zealand, and around 6:15 in the morning on the Sunday morning, he'd actually gone to surf alone while his wife was still asleep, sort of get out there and get some surfing done on his own. And funnily enough, there was a Port Lincoln student councillor, a guy called Jeffrey Hunter. He was actually sitting on top of a platform overlooking the bay, and he was just watching Cameron surf at around 7:15, 7:30. And this guy, Jeffrey Hunter, he said that it was like a really eerily calm day. It was like the surf was like glassy, so it was really clear. You know, there was no no sort of white water, but there was obviously still a decent swell for the surf. But he said it was eerily calm, like no wind, really good conditions, so very good visibility and stuff. And he said afterwards, he said there was absolutely no chance that a shark of that size could have mistook Cameron for anything else, just because the conditions were so good and the proximity to the shark prior to the actual main attack. And what the shark actually done, this is the actual bay here, so this is like the Cactus Beach. This is what it looks like, and I think that blue dot up there is where this guy Jeffrey Hunter was sitting, and Cameron was sort of, as mentioned, he was about 87 sort of yards from the shore, and he was actually paddling away from the beach, so he's paddling in this direction, so away, so I guess catch another set of waves. I'm not a surfer, but I guess he was sort of paddling away to catch the next wave. And this guy Jeffrey Hunter up here, he actually said he saw the shark actually swim round behind him, so the shark knew which way he was going, and it sort of deployed the normal hunting strategy. It circled in behind him before making the actual main assault. So this large shark circled in behind Cameron, and just as he was heading away from the beach, obviously to get this other set, and once the shark was sort of in place directly behind him, it then launched like a full speed sort of charge attack. And then he said that the shark actually, when it arrived at the board, it actually circled him a few times before taking him down, and it took him down. And then moments later, Cameron actually popped to the surface, and this guy Jeffrey Hunter, he said he sort of calmly just got back on his board, and you could actually see his face, and he said he looked really calm, got back on his board. He just started paddling for the beach really calmly, but he actually only made it about 9 to 12 feet, so he didn't get very far. He only got a few meters when the shark actually struck him again. And then suddenly he was just gone from sight. And the only thing that came to the surface was just a few bits of the board, but then obviously there's like a visibility, loads of blood came up as well in the spot where he just been, and there was actually some visible sort of thrashing underneath the water, but he couldn't make out the shark. And then a few minutes sort of passed, but then the shark actually resurfaced 500 meters out, so the shark had sort of swam with Cameron in his mouth, sort of 437 yards away from the spot on which it had originally taken him under. And then the shark began to thrash again, and it began to thrash quite violently. And then another section of the board was sort of dislodged in that area, and then he said the shark actually rolled and revealed its belly. You could see the white belly of this large great white. And there was other witnesses as well. There's a guy called Trevor Prower. He actually said he saw the upper torso of a person in the shark's mouth, and then that's all that was witnessed. And then the shark just disappeared, and no body was ever recovered. They actually managed to recover sections of the board for forensics and stuff, and it was identified as a great white. And witnesses sort of tried to corroborate the size. They said it was at least a 16 to 18 footer, so 5.5 meter shark. And this guy was basically predated from his board, completely predated. So he was sort of stalked, knocked off his board, got back on his board, was hit again, taken under, travelled a large distance, probably still alive, being eaten, and then the shark then surfaced again, violently rolling over, and just completely predated this guy, and then just swam off. And there's a few extenuating circumstances. I guess that this area is historically known for large great whites. That's one thing I will say. And also the salmon were running that time of year as well, and also some marine biologists and local tuna fishermen said that there'd been sort of a warning because they've been overfishing the tuna, and they said that it might lead to more attacks, but that's sort of circumstantial, if you will. So that's that first attack there. So we'll just move on to the second attack. And what makes this astonishing is that there's only these two instances I can find of predations on surfers. You'll never believe it, but the next one happened the next day. You honestly couldn't make this stuff up. So literally the next day, about 370 sort of miles away, as the fish swims, at Black Point there was another fatality and another predation by a large great white shark on a surfer. So obviously you can't really say that these two are linked, because I don't think a shark could swim this distance in what's that, 36 hours. You'd have to be swimming pretty quick to get there. So obviously I'm not saying it's the same shark, but it's just insane that these only two instances I could find of predations on surfers happened in consecutive days, basically. And so this is second attack, took place off Black Point, South Australia, 25th Monday, September, year 2000. Jevon Wright, 17-year-old. So yeah, it's just like a young kid, obviously surfing, large great white shark. Time of the attack at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, he was only in 3 meters of water, about 9 feet. He was about 50 yards from the shore, like 55 yards from shore, 50 meters. Again, same moon phase, waning crescent moon. Water temperature the same, it's about 16 degrees. Quite chilly there with a southern swell. Again, yeah, so fatal predation, and he was actually surfing with friends, so he wasn't a lone surfer. He was actually surfing with a couple of buddies. So I'll move on to this second attack. Excuse me. So yeah, in this second attack, so around 10:30 in the morning, Jevon had been seen getting changed and entering the water. So it was way before the attack, so about half 10. So this area off Black Point is pretty isolated, and these swells sort of roll in from the south, and there's some kelp beds as you enter the water, enter the sea. So around 12:45, two guys, a guy called Craig and a guy called Kim, entered the water with Jevon, who was still sort of surfing, and they said that they'd actually seen a seal sort of follow them in off the set. So they just like surfed the set, and Craig and Kim were, I think, a wave ahead of Jevon. They'd noted a seal sort of follow them in, so Jevon caught the wave behind them, and he was almost at the cliff face, and he just disappeared. And Craig and Kim sort of sat on their boards looking for Jevon, and they were sort of scanning the water looking for him, and the sea was quite flat. And then a short time later the next wave came in, and it sort of raised them up out of the water so they could see a little bit more, obviously, because before they were sort of low. The wave rolled in, it sort of lifted them up, and as the wave lifted them up, they just saw like a massive 2-foot tail of this shark sticking up out of the water, so that like the tail fin was sticking out about 2 foot, and they could see sort of the full length of the shark. So as their eyes sort of went from the tail down the length of the shark to the dorsal fin, then to the mouth, they actually saw Jevon's head and arm like sticking out of the shark's mouth. So yeah, obviously their jaws sort of dropped. And then the next wave came, and they sort of went down again, so they couldn't see anything, obviously panicking. And then as the next wave sort of dropped and then lifted them back up again, they sort of rose up again. And again, for the second time, they just saw the shark still sort of hanging in the water, but this time it was sort of thrashing side to side. And they could see Jevon's board was like attached to him, and he was actually inside the shark's mouth. His board was about 6'2", and it was just sort of beside the shark, so the shark was sort of thrashing to dislodge the board. And then they sort of went down again, and the shark just disappeared from view, obviously with their friend. And then Chris and Kim, they couldn't believe it. They sort of stayed still on this submerged rock looking for Jevon everywhere. They said that they saw his board sort of pop up. So these two kids, the crazy kids, they actually paddled out to get his board. I had no idea why. They're really brave of them, obviously. But there was absolutely no trace of the body. So they took the board back in with them, and the board was analysed, and it was just analysed, and the sort of marks were a great white shark, and obviously the witnesses saw it was a great white shark. But again, nothing was ever found of this kid, completely sort of eaten and swallowed whole by this large great white shark. And again, it's sort of the same extenuating circumstances, and Jevon was wearing like a black wetsuit. So that's that attack as well. So these are the two predations. And just sort of going back to this paper I mentioned in the Simon Nallis video, this sort of shark's eye view testing of mistaken identity theory on sort of like surfers and swimmers and seals, and it sort of relied on this premise here, this sort of premise with the these cycles per degree, which is sort of like you're sort of trying to guesstimate how well sharks see in water. And obviously, if you're basing it on a juvenile shark, you might have seen like the Malibu artist videos on YouTube where the juvenile great white sharks in California, they're just not interested in surfers. Obviously, they're too small. Like, large prey is not on the menu, so they literally do not attack surfboards or paddle boarders. They're just not interested. But obviously, larger sharks. My contention is that larger sharks have much better visibility than 5 CPD. So these sharks here that attacked Cameron and Jevon had much better vision, and particularly the attack on Cameron Byers was where that was sort of really good conditions. My theory is that that shark knew exactly what was on that board, basically, and it knew that something was on the board that was worth eating. And you could even argue that it thought that a seal was sitting on the board. You know, you could say that, but it knew something was on the board that was worth eating, and it just basically took it, and it kept going and going and going till it got it, and then once it got it, it ate it, basically. So, you know, I think that these sharks, you know, you got to give them some more credit. I think they definitely know more than what we think. So I think these 2 attacks, or particularly the attack on Cameron Byers here, the 25-year-old, the first one I went through, I just don't believe it was mistaken identity. I just think this shark sort of eyed him up, and then when it circled him, it thought, right, there's something here worth pursuing. So it just attacked him and ate him. You know, it took him as prey. I believe it did anyway. So yeah. That's that video. So so I literally cannot, unless anyone can find another predation on a surfer. There is one other one that dates back quite a few years, but I think that's where they never found the body. I think it's a South African attack, but there's probably been more where, I don't know, there's probably a statistic out there where surfers have disappeared maybe, and they've never found bodies and then they've been predated by sharks. But I think these 2, I would say, are the only witnessed predations on humans from surfers. So the question is, do great white sharks hunt and kill and eat surfers? So the evidence says that they do. Extremely rare. So as I mentioned, 0.2% of surfing attacks or interactions will end this way, you know, so extremely rare, but there you go, it does happen. So that's that video today. I've rambled on again, but that's it. Enjoy it. Laters.